You know that feeling when you get a raise and for about 2 weeks you feel completely unstoppable? You're checking your bank account just for fun. You're thinking about upgrading things. Maybe you finally get the bigger apartment or the nicer car, or you just stop checking prices at the grocery store. And then somehow a few months later you're right back to feeling broke. Except now you're making more money than ever. Sound familiar? Here's the unsettling part. That feeling isn't bad luck. It's not inflation. It's not even bad budgeting in the way you think. There's one specific spending decision, one habit so normal that almost nobody notices they're doing it, that quietly costs the average person somewhere north of $200,000 over their lifetime. And it's not the lattes. It's not the avocado toast. It's not even your car payment. My name is Cole, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why two people earning the exact same income can end up in completely different financial universes by the time they're 50. If you've ever wondered why getting a raise doesn't seem to actually make you feel richer, stick around. Because today we're going to dig into the real reason, and trust me, it's going to make you look at your own paycheck differently. If this helps you catch something in your own spending, do me a favor and hit subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel keep going. So let's start with the setup because you need to understand the trap before you can see how deep it goes. Picture two people, same age, same job title, same starting salary of $50,000 a year. Person A gets a raise every year or two, like most working people do. Person B gets the exact same raises, dollar for dollar, over their entire career. By the time they're both 55 years old, they've earned the exact same total income. Not close, identical. And yet when you look at their bank accounts, one of them has built real wealth, and the other one is still living paycheck to paycheck despite making six figures. Same income. Wildly different outcomes. What happened? The answer is something economists have a name for, but almost nobody outside of academic finance ever talks about it in plain language. It's called lifestyle creep. And before you roll your eyes because you think you already know what that means, stick with me, because the real mechanics of it are way more sneaky than just spending more when you earn more. Here's how it actually works. When you get a raise, let's say an extra $500 a month, your brain doesn't process that money as new wealth to be protected. It processes it as newly available spending capacity. This isn't a character flaw. It's not because you're bad with money. It's how human psychology is wired. Researchers call it the hedonic treadmill, and it describes the tendency for your sense of what counts as normal to constantly readjust upward to match whatever you currently have access to. The studio apartment that felt perfectly fine at $35,000 a year suddenly feels cramped at $55,000. The reliable little sedan that felt totally fine starts to feel embarrassing once your coworkers are driving something nicer. Nothing about your actual needs changed. What changed is your reference point. And here's the part that makes this so dangerous. It happens in such small increments that you never notice the moment it's happening. Nobody wakes up one day and decides, I'm going to inflate my lifestyle to match my new income. It happens $5 at a time. You start ordering delivery instead of cooking just twice a week, because you can afford it now. You upgrade your phone plan. You start buying the nicer version of things you used to buy generic. None of these decisions feel big. Each one feels completely reasonable in isolation, but add them up over a decade and you've quietly built a lifestyle that consumes 100% of your income, no matter how much that income grows. Let's actually run the math on this, because the numbers are where this really gets uncomfortable. Let's say you're 25 years old, making $50,000 a year, and you're currently saving 10% of your income, which is honestly already better than most people. Every time you get a raise, instead of saving that new money, you absorb it into your lifestyle. Maybe you bump your savings rate up just slightly, but mostly that money disappears into nicer everyday spending. Over 30 years with normal raises and promotions, your income might triple. Lots of people's does. But if your spending also roughly triples along with it, your savings rate barely budges. You're still saving around 10%, just 10% of a much bigger number, which sounds fine until you compare it to what could have happened. Now picture the alternate version of you. Same income growth, same raises, same career trajectory, but every time you get a raise, you commit to saving half of the increase before you let yourself spend any of it. You still get to enjoy more money. Your lifestyle still improves over time, but it improves slower than your income does. That gap, the space between what you earn and what you spend, is where wealth actually gets built. Run that scenario over 30 years with reasonable investment returns, and that gap alone, just from capturing half of your raises instead of all of them, can be worth more than $200,000 by retirement. Same career, same raises, same lifestyle, just slightly delayed. $200,000 difference. And this is the part that should really sit with you. Most people who fall into the lifestyle creep trap never feel like they're doing anything wrong. They're not buying yachts. They're not making one single catastrophic purchase. The car payment trap, the one everybody loves to point to, that one is at least visible. You can see the truck in the driveway. Lifestyle creep is invisible because it's made entirely of decisions that each individually look completely fine. Nobody looks at a slightly nicer apartment and says, "This is the decision that's going to cost me $200,000. But stack enough of those slightly nicer decisions on top of each other for 3 decades, and that's exactly what happens. Here's where it gets even more interesting because the trap doesn't just hit your wallet, it actually hits your psychology in a way that makes it self-perpetuating. Once your spending rises to match a new income level, going backward feels like a punishment, even if going backward would just mean returning to a lifestyle you were completely happy with a year earlier. This is called loss aversion, and it's one of the most well-documented biases in behavioral economics. Losing something you already have feels far worse than never gaining it in the first place. So once you've upgraded your apartment, downgrading feels like a personal failure, even though by definition you were perfectly content in the smaller place just months before. This is why lifestyle creep almost never reverses on its own. Once the new normal sets in, your brain defends like it's always been there. So if this is happening to basically everyone, quietly, invisibly, why doesn't anyone notice until it's too late? Part of the answer is that we're constantly comparing ourselves to the wrong baseline. You don't compare your spending to what you were doing 5 years ago. You compare it to what the people around you are doing right now. And the people around you are going through the exact same invisible lifestyle creep that you are. So everyone's reference point keeps drifting upward together, which makes the whole thing feel completely normal. Nobody in your friend group feels like they're overspending, because you're all overspending at roughly the same pace. It's only when you zoom out and compare your savings rate to your income over a decade that the pattern becomes obvious. Now, I want to be really clear about something here because I'm not telling you to never improve your lifestyle as you earn more money. That would be miserable advice, and honestly, nobody would follow it anyway. The goal isn't zero lifestyle improvement. The goal is making sure your lifestyle improves slower than your income does, so that a widening gap opens up between the two. That gap is the entire engine of wealth building. Without it, no amount of income growth will ever translate into actual financial progress, because your spending will simply rise to consume whatever you earn, no matter how high that number gets. This is exactly why high earners can still be broke. It's not about how much you make. It's about the size of the gap between what you make and what you spend, and whether that gap is growing or shrinking over time. So what actually breaks the cycle? The single most effective tool against lifestyle creep is something almost embarrassingly simple, and it's the fact that it works automatically that makes it so powerful. It's called a raise split. The next time your income goes up, whether it's a raise, a bonus, a promotion, or a new job that pays more, before you let that extra money touch your checking account, redirect a fixed percentage of it straight into savings or investments automatically. 50% is a great target if you can manage it, but even something as modest as 25% of every future raise, automated so you never see it land in your spending account, is enough to permanently break the pattern. The reason this works isn't willpower, it's removing the decision entirely. You're never tempted to overspend money you never see in the first place. This is the exact mechanism, by the way, behind why people who get automatic increases to their retirement contributions every year end up saving dramatically more than people who have to manually decide to increase their contribution every single year. Automating the decision removes the moment where lifestyle creep usually sneaks in. The second thing that helps is keeping a rough awareness of your savings rate as a percentage, not a dollar amount. If you only track that you're saving $500 a month, that number can stay completely flat for years, even as your income climbs, and you'll never notice the percentage quietly shrinking. But if you check in once or twice a year and ask what percentage of my income did I actually keep this year, the pattern becomes impossible to miss. A rising income with a falling percentage is the single clearest signal that lifestyle creep has taken hold. And the third thing, which sounds almost too simple to matter, is deliberately waiting before upgrading anything after a raise. Not forever. Just give it 30 to 60 days before you let a new income level translate into a new spending level. This sounds small, but it interrupts the exact psychological moment where your brain tries to recalibrate what feels normal. Most lifestyle upgrades happen in a kind of emotional high right after a raise lands. Building in a delay gives that initial impulse time to fade, and most of the time you'll realize you were actually completely fine with your previous lifestyle all along. Here's the thing that I think gets lost in most conversations about money. We obsess over the visible decisions, the car, the vacation, the big purchase, because those are easy to point at and easy to judge. But the decision that's actually quietly draining the most wealth from the average person isn't one decision at all. It's the decision made over and over again without ever being consciously made, to let your spending rise in lockstep with your income instead of letting a gap open up between the two. It's invisible precisely because it never feels like a decision. It just feels like normal life keeping pace with the normal raises. If there's one thing I want you to take from this video, it's this. The next time you get a raise, don't ask yourself what you can finally afford now. Ask yourself how much of that raise you can capture before your lifestyle even notices it's there. That single shift in thinking, repeated over and over across a career, is worth more than almost any individual financial decision you'll ever make. Same income, same career, same raises everyone else gets. The only difference is what happens to the money in the moment right after it lands in your account. And that difference, quietly, invisibly, compounding for 30 years, is worth far more than $200,000.